Um, roll titles. Mankind has always found ways to make themselves feel different. Eating certain berries, smoking certain herbs, getting really, really drunk. And there have likewise been many people who are saying, this is bad for you, you shouldn't do it. Not do it in moderation, but not do it at all. These people were known as party poopers. An example of a Class A party pooper was Henry J. Anslinger, who was established as the head of the newly formed FDA in the 1930s. Now, since at that time, every state had its own laws and regulations regarding drugs, he needed to find a way to bring everything under his auspices. And he chose the perfect method to sway the American public: fear. And to do that, he needed a convenient target to demonize. And he chose marijuana. Now, marijuana has been moderately popular throughout history, starting in the 1920s in the United States when Mexican immigrants bought it up to be able to recover from a long, hard day of working for the nasty white people. But he started a massive campaign, even going so far as to deliberately destroy any information that marijuana was not bad for you, in order to fulfill his glorious dream of ensuring that the FDA controlled this demonic drug, and incidentally made sure that he had all the power. The end result of that is films like today's movie. Originally called Tell Your Children, it was created by a church group, but before it was finished, it was bought up by a film producer who turned it into an exploitation film, thus making it much more interesting. Of course, at its core, it's still a propaganda film, which means it's going to be full of a lot of lies. Now, originally I was going to turn this into a toking movie. That is to say, every time you see something that is blatantly different from what actual reality is, like an effect that marijuana supposedly has, which is not true, or talking about how people who smoke marijuana are a certain way or whatever, you take a toke. But, well, I understand that many parts of the world, and in the USA, where I'm apparently quite popular, it's not yet been legalized, so forget that. Fortunately, we've got a standby. Booze. Everyone's drug of choice. So, every time something comes up with it's a blatant lie or deliberate misinformation about marijuana, take a shot. So, ladies, gentlemen, and potheads, let's take a look at Tell Your Children, or as it's more commonly known, Reefer Madness. So the movie starts with a scroll talking about how it's very important that this left information be recorded to the public, and how they've totally not made any of this stuff up to warn us about the effects of this terrible soul-destroying substance. Wow. They just completely lied to us right at the start. Well, folks, you know what that means. Take your first shot. Our movie really starts with a man talking to a parent-teacher organization. This man's Professor Carroll, an actual scientist at the time, talking about how this most powerful force against the spread of this demon weed is the Parent-Teacher Association. Anyway, he then proceeds to prove that he is a man who desperately needs to take a toke or two because he is so straight-laced, he has a stick up its ass that perhaps has a stick up its ass. He then also proceeds to talk about how the best way to actually transport and smuggle drugs.
The field of marijuana was found behind a tenement court. The weed was here being cultivated, regularly stripped and dried and sold in schools and at government army posts in and around New York. The dried leaves and berries are ground up and made into cigarettes by a simple hand machine. The deadly narcotic is thus quickly and easily prepared for its market. The sale of marijuana is even more difficult to detect and halt than the traffic in drugs such as opium, morphine, and heroin. They are hidden in fake jewelry cases, in the heels of shoes, women's shoes especially, because the drugs can be secreted in false heels. Hollowed shaving brushes are another medium. Books with false centers are often used. Watch cases are convenient hiding places. The value of drugs thus seized is enormous. Recently, a huge supply of heroin was taken. It was concealed in an apparently harmless shipment of 35 barrels of olive oil. The deadly drug was burned in the incinerator of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. And more vicious, more deadly even than these soul-destroying drugs is the menace of marijuana.
So compared to heroin, opium, and cocaine, marijuana is even worse. That's another shot. Next, excuse me. Next we have a story about how these evil drugs are transported and delivered to the public, especially to school children. We meet a number of very well-dressed gangsters who apparently decide the best way to deal with the situation is to go to soda shops and such and inveigle high school children, strangely enough played in their late 20s and early 30s, into their dark web of weed and destruction.
Hey kids, we're having a little party up at my girlfriend's apartment. Wouldn't you like to come? Oh, I'd love to. You want to come, don't you, Jimmy?
Oh, sure. Any place with you.
The guy you saw named Jimmy is brother to Mary and her prospective boyfriend, Bill. Bill is a total wiener. He wears a sweater vest and a bow tie, ensuring that no other girl will possibly want to have anything to do with him. In other words, the kind of kid who really needs to get high. Anyway, Jimmy tries to get him to come out of his tight-wad little shell by taking him to the place where all this stuff is going on, which is a perfectly ordinary apartment, where a bunch of people are smoking and running around and dancing a lot. Now, everybody knows, except the people who made this movie, that marijuana does not make you jump around wildly. It's very calming and makes you sit down and just look at the funny little dancing guy on the couch. So, that's another shot.
If you want a good smoke, try one of these. I thought you were a spirit. Of course, if you're afraid. That's better. That's more like it. I know you like that. Really, you will. And just take a puff of that.
And so the girl named Blanche and her boyfriend, Ralph, that's right, Ralph, have brought him into their world of depression, depravity, and really off-color clothing, and kind of hooked on the stuff. Then we jump over it for some apparent reason to the headquarters of the gangsters who live in a tiny little room. One of the gangsters apparently has a conscience because he doesn't like to sell this stuff to kids.
Listen, you never heard no beef when I had to sell that rotten gin. You're after the dough, aren't you? Yeah, but I don't need dough that bad.
taking two-bit pieces from kids.
There are millions of two-bit pieces just begging to be taken. Don't be a dope.
I'm just dope enough to draw the line selling hop to kids.
All right, Pete. You know what my policy has always been. The boys are not satisfied. I'm always glad to have them retire. Retire permanently. So long.
I only wish you had a couple of kids so I could...
Yeah.
I guess the point of that scene was to make the bad guy seem evil, because he's willing to sell the dope to kids. Despite the fact that everybody was quite happily smoking a normal, harmless cigarettes before they got hooked on the stuff. And the threat wasn't really very threatening because he just says, okay, bye-bye. And it never mentioned again. Anyway, on to the next scene. And Mary has come to find Billy because he's been doing badly in school and stuff like that. And Ralph has decided to get her joked up so he can have a little fun with her. Mary Lane, that's her name, is about to fall victim to the Mary Jane. I am funny. Well, anyway, Mary turns him down, but she's still kind of choked up and not really able to defend herself. And Ralph was demonstrating manic behavior, which is not really a symptom of marijuana, so take another shot. And when Billy comes out of the room where he's been doing a bunch of 1930s style groupie stuff with Blanche, he says what's going on and hallucinates.
Romeo. What o'clock tomorrow shall I send to thee? It's sweet of you to help me, Bill. Oh, thank you, kind sir. Bill's not a girl.
Wow. You know, I guess being high makes you a really good trick shooter. Because you see, that boy would have gone underneath the couch. But apparently somehow I managed to bounce off the wall underneath the couch, go up to the ceiling, and then come straight down to shoot Mary in the back. That's really impressive for somebody who's high. Now the gangsters decide they'll get out of it by putting the gun, after they lop off the fingerprints, of course, into Bill's hand and sort of convincing him that he did it in a fit of rage and jealousy, and being stoned out of his mind, he believes it. And he's sent to court and put on trial for the murder under the suspicion of being insane because of marijuana. Now, pot doesn't make you crazy. So, that's another shot.
But he might have been insane when he did it.
No, he wasn't. He knew what he was doing.
But supposing he was insane?
You can never make me believe it nor anybody else. We'll take a first vote. $11 for conviction, $1 for acquittal.
But there's a reasonable doubt about the boy's sanity. We can't.
No doubt about the fact that he murdered her. He admitted it himself. That wasn't the first time he was there. We gotta make an example before boys like that contaminate all of our children. We can't have every murderer hiding behind the gag that he's insane. Sure, they see red before they kill somebody. But whose fault is it?
Ralph is feeling really bad about this because he knows that Billy's innocent and will probably be hung. That's what they used to do back then. And he wants to go confess what's going on. So they figure the best thing to do is to keep him locked up and choked up. And it turns out that the marijuana actually makes him feel more guilty and give him more of a conscience about what's going on. As opposed to just making him figure out, well, it doesn't matter so long as I got my Mary Jane. Now, while this may be a positive effect, it's still not true about what pot does to you. So, that's another shot! Anyway, well, let's play some music on the piano. Pretty good for somebody who's stoned herself. And he starts to exhibit really manic behavior now, because the pot is apparently making him crazy. And as this... right. Anyway, manic behavior and going a woohoo is not really a symptom of pot. So... that's another shot!
Master. Master. Play faster. Play faster.
Anyway, Frank comes in and he knows he has to kill Ralph because he'll talk. And if he talks to him, Frankie boy gets the news. So Ralph knows he's gonna kill him. He's stoned, he ain't dumb. And he ain't gonna stand for that nursery Bob.
I know what you want. You want to kill me. You're crazy. Take it easy, kid. I just want to talk to you.
So somebody calls the police, and they come in and they see the body and all that, and the whole drug gang gets gathered up and sent off to jail. And Billy confesses what's going on, and Billy is free. Hooray! Wow, she was really strong to break that window so fast. And it's a good thing she had a mannequin double to take the fall for her. Well, that could have really hurt. And so the movie ends with our Mr. Carroll kind of guy talking about how this totally really happened, honest. And it's really important not to let people get their hands on pot, or something this might happen again.
We must work untiringly so that our children are obliged to learn the truth, because it is only through knowledge that we can safely protect them. Failing this, the next tragedy may be that of your daughter, or your son, or yours, or yours, or yours.
Joke's on you, Mr. Carroll. I haven't got no kids. I was ripped from madness. How was it? It was completely ridiculous. Ridiculous. It was really dumb. I can see what they were going for, even with the official church stuff, before the other guy decided to make it more interesting. But it's really just full of a whole bunch of lies. But it doesn't really do that to you. It can do bad stuff, sure, if you misuse it, but overall it's a lot less dangerous than they show here. And as sure as heck ain't as bad as heroin and cocaine and bath salts and all that other stuff. So as a PSA, I give it a 0. But as a comedy, oh man, this is just so damn funny. It's like watching a high school play and everybody's got drunk before they went on stage. So as a comedy, I'm going to give this a 5 little pointy leaves out of 5. It's real fun to watch, and hey, you want to get wasted by watching it do it, it'd be even more fun. I'm still a Canadian critic, and I'm going to go lay down for a while. Ow.